corsets. We all know what these are, and if you've ever worn one, you know they can be extremely painful to wear, and they're actually not very good for your health because of the way they squish your organs in. But in the 18th century, they were mandatory. So the corset was part of a lady's undergarments, which held the torso into the hourglass shape that was needed for the type of dresses they wore. Their other purpose was to create perfect posture, forcing a woman to sit upright as they were laced very tightly. And basically, the shape a woman would take in a corset was her shoulders would be pulled back from being tightly laced. And then, of course, her bust would be held up and her torso would take a good shape. So the corset is basically attributed to Catherine de' Medici, the wife of Henry II of France. In the 1550s, she enforced a ban on thick waists for the ladies of her court. And for about 350 years after that, corsets were the only means of support for a woman, with laces to tighten the back and whalebone stays to create the figure at the front. At first, these garments were only reserved for the aristocracy. The term stays was generally used during the 17th and 18th centuries. In the 17th centuries, tabs or fingers were added to the waist. So I'll show you an example of a corset used in probably the mid 18th century, 1730s, 1740s. So this is it here. And down below here would be the tabs or fingers. And this is probably more of a 1770s corset. Again, you can see the tabs at the bottom. Here is the early corset, which is during the time of Catherine de' Medici. And these corsets were first started out as being made of iron. They looked quite painful to wear. And then this would be an example of a corset worn in the time of Henry VIII. All right, so stays evolved in the 18th century and whalebone became more often used. The corset was low and wide in the front, while at the back it could reach to the upper shoulder. All right, so shoes. Like today, shoes were a major accessory in the 17th and 18th centuries. During the reign of King Louis XIV, the age of exuberance, it became fashionable for men to wear high-heeled shoes. Louis XIV himself liked to wear fancy, wide-rimmed hats, lace, and fancy shoes. Did you know that King Louis XIV was a very skilled dancer? From an early age, he enjoyed ballet, and he had strong leg muscles and was very fit. Everything he did, from dancing to dressing to the way he talked and walked, exuded brilliance. That's why he was known as the Sun King. During the 1780s and 1790s, the heels of these shoes for women were lower, and by the 1800s, they were flat and resembled ballerina slippers. If you've ever seen a picture of a woman painted during the time of Napoleon, like Empress Josephine, you'll notice that her shoes are flat and sometimes had laces like ballerina flats. So, hats and wigs, two other major accessories for a woman. Women in these days had very few ways to express themselves verbally, and therefore they used fashion to do so. And if you've ever seen the movie The Duchess, starring Keira Knightley, there's the wedding night scene with the Duke, where she says, well, you have so many ways of expressing yourselves, whereas we only have our hats and our dresses. So, extravagant hats and wigs were richly decorated. Marie Antoinette was known for her highly stacked wigs that were excessively powdered and elaborately decorated. She even had someone whose full-time job was to keep her wigs clean, brushed, and well taken care of. So this would have been called her wig master. It was said to have taken 2 to 3 hours just to do her hair. So the morning dressing ritual was quite long. Hats, too, were very elaborate and large, decorated with flowers, feathers, jewels, etc. They had to be pinned to a lady's wig so they wouldn't fall off. Alright, so that's it for part 2. I hope you enjoyed. Again, be sure to subscribe.